Hello, hello! Today we are talking about the Gaslight District, which is a pilot for something? Maybe a show that they're running? I don't know. But this is from the Glitch YouTube channel, or group, or whatever it is exactly, I don't know. It is the same group of people that made the Digital Circus, which is that thing about the little clown girl, if you know what I'm talking about. Glitch is one of those YouTube channels where it feels like everything they make is going to be like, 1 to 5 million views, something like that. So, worth some discussion. So in the meantime, I have already written and recorded another video. I just need to start producing it. But this is faster, so art first, then another Dragon Ball video, and how much you guys like that. Alright, so this, Gaslight District. A lot of money was pumped into this, I can tell. Now, it's not like a Marvel cinematic movie or something, but if you look at the credits for the 3D animators, 2D animators, and so on, it's a fairly long list, especially considering that it's just a YouTube video, and you're surviving off, I guess, YouTube money? I'm not sure how this works. Because these days, success on YouTube is now you're either a gigantic corporate team, and everything you make looks like it belongs on television, or, it's some guy that no one's ever heard of, whose content is really painfully generic, and it's filmed on an iPhone, and it's about nothing. But for some reason, Zoomers just can't stop sharing it. So maybe, thankfully, this is the corporate one. Often I had to remind myself that the days of all YouTube videos just being some guy that's just making stuff in his spare time is... that was a long time ago. The difference in ad revenue must be stark, because if I release a video, like one of my videos, a really good video, I might make a little bit less than like $500 or something off that. Whereas I imagine for these things that are like 5 million views, the advertisement revenue must be very, very different if it's able to support like 30, 50 people. So hopefully it's bringing in enough to keep supporting everyone? I hope so. Anyways. So my no spoilers sort of first impression of it was, as people were asking me, that it looks very good, but I'm not sure about it having much substance to it, which was my also general problem with Digital Circus. With Digital Circus, it also kind of dives into mental health, so it's about things, but at the same time it's also very mopey and kind of just reiterates the same problems over and over again. And I do know that has sort of worn people down on that one. But with Gaslight, it does have a much more distinct art style, and it's really dialed into that. It looks very good. It looks extremely good. The way that they handle motion reminds me a bit of the second Puss in Boots movie. The way it restricts frame rate and distorts the models in order to achieve specific effects. It's a very smart, modern use of 3D technology. Now, I saw the thumbnail for it originally, and I didn't bother watching it for a while, because my first impression of it was that it was probably going to be another, like, has-been hotel type. And I'll describe that as... I was afraid of it being a lot of very over-the-top violence and pee-pee poo-poo, like edgy humor that doesn't really go anywhere. I'm not sure how to describe that brand of content, but I've recognized it throughout my entire life, and the first thing that I can think of that is like that from my own life anyways, would be Ed Roth monster car illustrations. You'll recognize them if you see them. It's a monster inside of a little tiny car, and it's very cartoony looking, slobbering, eyeballs sticking out of their heads. It's a very 1980s, early 1990s sort of thing. So, quirky, high energy with some sort of counterculture edge to them, that sort of energy going on, but nothing really substantive enough for it to have longevity. Now, I'm not saying that Has-Been Hotel is that, or it doesn't have any substance and so on, just that the focus is usually not on narrative, it's on style. Now, is this the case for Gaslight District? I don't think so exactly. I'll get more into it in the spoilers, which will be right now. Alright, I will go over this thing via my notes. So, sequentially. Now, the premise is mildly interesting. This is another post-apocalypse setting. The ruins of the old world seem to all be underwater. And everything that everyone lives on seems to be just garbage that has been piled on top of the old ruins. Humans are effectively extinct and have been replaced with immortal zombies, who I'm assuming also used to be human. The Gaslight District isn't defined as being unique in the world. Like, I don't know if there are other cities. I don't know what exactly the Gaslight District is. Is the district a district, literally, of another city? I don't know. I will take a moment to say that this series also feels like one of those modern shows that is YouTube explanation bait, where you're supposed to go watch lore videos of people pausing frames and pointing things out and so on. It isn't so bad that you get to like obnoxious FromSoft territory where Miyazaki is trying to say something but ends up saying nothing. No, I think they do a pretty good job of delivering the story, so there's no worry about that exactly. But there is a lot of you blink and you miss it sort of things, and the story is couched in the behavior that characters have towards one another and so on. It does a pretty good job of presenting the story for people that are watchful. So that's definitely not a criticism. Now, actually going into the video, the narrator claims that the Gaslight District is abandoned by God and the people are rotting in some sort of way. The world itself seems like it's divided up into rotlings, which are, generic, unimportant background characters that are like faux skeleton designs with heads that sort of look like cardboard boxes if they were skulls. And then the unique designs seem to be zombies, who are usually green or sort of, bluish green, sometimes visibly rotting, but not always. But also there's a character named Breadhead who has bread for a head. What the rules are on zombies, I have absolutely no idea. Maybe that one character is unique. We really don't see too many zombies otherwise, now that I think about it. Also, there are angels, who are really big crow people. They have arms and legs. Maybe the smaller ones don't, now that I think about it. But I think all of them have arms and legs. It's strange. Also, for some reason, you're going to be hearing a lot of for some reason, there's a prophecy about a human being born from an egg, like a literal egg, not like an egg, but an egg, every 10,000 years, that everyone in the city, the district, again, I don't know, anyway, that everyone is really preoccupied with. Why, again, I don't know, because it seems like they would have forgotten about it after a few hundred years. There might be an answer to that at the very end, but I'll get to it. I wrote this down. It reminds me a bit of the Human Hunts episode of Futurama, where there's a planet full of robots that have never actually seen a human before, but every day is centered around them going out in a mob and looking for one to kill. So it's a fairly basic premise for what the setting is trying to do, which is good, but also there are enough unexplained elements that it keeps you trying to figure out what is happening, which is also good. That's something that you really want out of a setting. Something that you can present it in the space of 1 or 2 sentences that makes perfect sense, but is still inciting enough that you want to try to figure out what the hell it is that it's about. Alright, so jumping from that straight into the actual story, which, again, the video does a pretty good job of doing, it introduces the Smiling Dead, which is a local crime family. The first scene synopsizes things pretty well. It also does a very good job of selling what the animation direction and the art style is going to be looking like. A lot of high energy focus on distorting the models again, like I was talking about, really sells that very well. Everyone in the world seems to be either amoral or just straight up evil. There are no good people, which again is something that I was concerned about with the whole Has-Been Hotel thing. Just everyone's bad, but sometimes they feel a little bit bad about it. But Melancholy, who is the character that I'm drawing here, is the human. But no one knows about that, because Ken, who is the butcher guy, is silencing anyone who does figure it out. She has black blood, while normal people, like the zombies and the rotlings and such, have purple blood. Meanwhile, at almost all times, these little angel birds, the crow guys with the halos, they're sort of like living cameras, and they see everything that's going on and are projecting it back to someone somewhere else. So they hypothetically know that she's human and what she's been up to. Even after being shot in the head, or just tons of times, the characters never die. So whenever someone wants to dispose of a problem or quiet someone, they're cemented. give them the pair of cement shoes. And they're chained and floated down to the bottom of the old city at the bottom of the ocean because you can't kill them, which is, I like it. This is a very interesting concept because you can't get rid of anyone. So what do? You just have to make them disappear forever. Or maybe also they get eaten. That also comes up later on. I'm not really sure what happens to them if they get eaten. I don't think I would want to find out personally. But we also see a bunch of flies, like humanoid flies, that also seem to be immortal because they get run over or they get eaten or decapitated, and they're still alive. And those things, the flies, seem to be the cattle of the world. Once we get to the restaurant, we see that a bunch of them are frozen in the back room. Also, that for some reason they run a restaurant. I guess crime doesn't pay well enough, so they have to run a restaurant as well. I do know that this is a thing with the mob. They have fake food joints as a front. They usually don't have anything inside, and people in the area know not to go in. When I was in Cardiff, Wales, I think I ran across one of these. It was a pizza place that didn't seem to have anyone actually inside, despite the fact that it was open. I did one time hear someone tell me a story about going into a pizza place like this and asking for a pizza, and the people inside looked at him like he was a buffoon, but then went through the motions of preparing him a pizza anyways, and he said it was the best pizza he ever had. Although he realized during the making of it that he probably shouldn't be there. I bet forbidden pizza tastes really good. Unfortunately for this restaurant, they don't serve forbidden pizzas. They serve fly heads. And like I mentioned, the fly heads are also still alive. So enjoy that. Anyways, there's also a heaven that people keep going on about. There are angel crow things. There's also a heaven. I think that heaven is a big government building that's at the center of the district. And maybe it's also called Paradise Lost, or maybe Paradise Lost is the big building in the middle and heaven is something at the top of it. I don't know. It doesn't really do a good job of explaining it. But the plan is, in the pilot episode, that there is an angel egg up there, and Mel wants to grab it and draw some sort of symbol on it that will make people think it's a human egg, and then smash it while claiming it's a human egg, so that no one will suspect that a human being actually exists already. It isn't currently specified why people think a human is currently alive, or about to be born, but presumably it's because it's been about 10,000 years since the last one, since the show hammers in a couple of times that it's always 10,000 years apart. Now, something called the Virtue Core run Paradise Lost. And the Virtue Core seem to be brains in robot bodies. They also have goons that help them, and those goons might be rotlings, because they look very similar to the citizens that we see, the faceless, meaningless citizens that are there to be background filler. But at the same time, the Virtue Core people seem to also hate rotlings and think they're disgusting. So maybe the goons with them aren't rotlings? Or maybe the idea with this is that all of these things are actually cursed humans that are just appropriating different labels without realizing it. I don't know. Again, this is something that they don't need to explain in the pilot episode. It's not that important, and it keeps you wondering what's going on. But it is explained well enough that you can actually understand what's happening, which is more important. Now, according to Ken, Virtue Core sends criminals to Inferno, which is not a fiery place. It seems to be taken from Dante's Inferno as one of the frozen layers of hell where you're entombed in freezing rain for all time, similar to cementing. I think there's even a sign that actually says the name, and it is, I can't remember what it is, but it is one of the layers of hell that's stipulated in Dante's Inferno. But Ken seems to hate Virtue Core, and is very familiar with being sent to the Inferno somehow. Whether he was sent there, I don't know. Maybe he had like a wife or something that was sent there. We aren't told. And again, that's good. And I think all of this is still within 5-10 minutes, so we've already set up pretty much everything about the world that we need to know. If you ever heard of a tight script, that's what they're going for here. You can tell that there was a lot of work poured into trying to deliver information as concisely and quickly as possible. So yeah, you know everything that you need to know about the world at this point, I think. So the reason why they have been cementing people that they know is Mel has been outing herself accidentally as a human being to the people that she's working around. So in this case, Mel apparently is bisexual, I guess. since she was getting off to a Rotling Girly magazine, and that caused her nose to just erupt in blood, Master Roshi style. And before that, she was soliciting another person named Romeo, some guy at work, which resulted in him telling other people, and that resulted in 4 people that she worked with getting cemented. Now, I wrote this down because I started thinking about it, and also because I'm a bit of a pervert. But it made me wonder how in this world, if reproduction works at all. Obviously, including, factoring in the girly magazines, there's still some sort of sexuality of some sort, and people are still producing things about it if, there's Rotling magazines. But if everyone is a corpse or something, then there's no need for it anymore. So presumably nothing can actually have kids at this point, or maybe they still do, but they're born as these undead creatures. Again, I don't know. I don't think we ever actually see a child, so I'm going to assume that nothing is being born. But it would be interesting if Mel was, getting riled up on human hormones because, presumably she's young. She's, I'm guessing, a teenager in her 20s or something. You can't tell with art styles. But for everyone else, maybe it's more of this visual power angle approach. I don't know. Probably not. It's something that they're probably never going to touch on. Mildly interesting. Jack, the character that we see cemented at the beginning, has a relative listed on his ID card. His closest relative is listed as Mom, which I thought was pretty funny. Now, either this is a joke about him being a silly little guy and just thinking of his mother as quote-unquote Mom as being her name, or there's some... who knows with this sort of stuff? It could be that there's a giant creature somewhere that is literally just named Mom, that is the progenitor of all creatures in the world or something. I don't know. Maybe none of them even have mothers. Again, I don't know, and that is fine. But also at the same time, we have Breadhead over here, the zombie with the loaf of bread for a head that is already sliced. Have you noticed that? It's not that he has a freshly baked loaf of bread as a head. It is also sliced neatly into bread slices. And at the beginning, Ken describes him as having been young, so I guess in some capacity he was born recently? Or maybe because he's so abnormal looking from everyone else, maybe he was baked? Like I had this idea of maybe another person was ground up into bread and then used to bake him as a new person. That's just me guessing and making up stuff, though. But a lot of the characters do seem to have different ages, so there must be some sort of distinction between that somewhere coming from something. Anyway, the Virtue Goons, once we actually get to the Heaven area, seem like they're designed to look like they're wearing Prussian military gear from the 1800s for some reason. Maybe just because the artist likes the aesthetic, I don't know. But Breadhead also has a tongue that is made of bread. And something that I picked up on with this character is that Breadhead doesn't seem to have any moral center at all. He's almost treated like he's just a monster. Like, he's nice, he's polite to Mel at least, but he doesn't seem to care whether someone gets hurt or not. And a lot of characters in the show do seem to have that, stylized maliciousness that you see in adult cartoons. So maybe that's intentional, maybe it's just happenstance as a result of the tone, I don't know. At some point later, whenever they're escaping, Breadhead also inhales a packet of yeast that activates some sort of wad of paper that's inside of his head that causes a spell or like an alchemic layout or divination circle drawn on a sheet of paper, something to activate that gives him more power. So something's going on with him. I like that, the fact that it is there, you can see it, it's not explained, it's not overt, so you can sort of guess, but you do get the impression of what's happening with him without it being stated. Meanwhile, Mud, the sort of sniper character that is really rotting, he's really decaying, has some sort of odd past with one of the guards who's named Joshua, who also has a mustache for some reason, and Mud hates Joshua for no clear reason, whereas Joshua seems to really be excited to see him again. In the pilot, at least, there's not a lot of depth given to Mud. At one point earlier, he tries to convince Mel to work for him instead of working for Ken. And earlier, Ken referred to Breadhead as being a sibling to Mel. So it seems like Mud is the only one that isn't really directly related to them, I think. Also, while we're on the subject of characters, Ken seems to have, throughout the whole thing, hinted that he has some sort of brain switch. Not necessarily a dual personality or anything, but, just he flips a switch, then it makes him switch from being more this fatherly character to more of a psychotic one. And also, Ken seems to have this general self-loathing when it comes to whatever it is that he is, this sort of zombie nature. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe all zombies have that element to them. We haven't really seen, but interesting nonetheless. Also, while we're walking around, Mel is demonstrated to care less about the plan and seems to be more concerned about gaining Ken's fatherly approval. Although she only calls him Ken. She doesn't call him Dad or anything. So you do get the impression that she's doing this not because she's trying to protect herself as being the last human. She's just trying to, form a human connection with her father figure, even though none of them are human. But point being, while all this is happening, this silly invasion of the heaven area and trying to get the egg, and all the action sequences and the clever animation, there is some characterization going on that I do appreciate. Anyway, Breadhead has bread for a tongue, and that causes a bird to get attracted close to him so he can bite it. And that causes a bunch of other birds to get upset, I think. It's kind of hard to tell with the animation. And that creates an angel storm, apparently, which I'm going to guess is a lot of birds flying around, causing rain, maybe? Later on, we see the birds get so thick that they're almost like a toxic, flood that's going through the air, just eradicating everything that it touches. I appreciate that in the setting, this is completely normal to the characters. Everyone knows what an angel storm is, and everyone reacts to it. But the audience can just look at it and visibly see what it is and learn of it that way. So again, show don't tell. The show handles that very, very well. So while Mel goes for the egg, Ken goes after a surgeon, which I don't think this is even part of the plan, he just does this. He goes after a surgeon Virtue that is named Temperance, I think. It introduces the character as Temperance, but I'm not sure if that's the same character, because the first time that we see the character, the voice is very feminine. But the second that Ken the Butcher, as it's called, shows up, then it switches to a panicked masculine voice, like they're two completely different people. Very confusing. But Ken beats him to death with an angel bird, and this is considered a big deal by Mud, who's watching through the monitors. The Virtue that he's beating seems to bleed black blood, or maybe oil, or maybe it's stylized because of the scene. Again, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. But definitely something to note for later. Now, once Mel gets up to heaven, which I'm guessing she went through Paradise Lost to get there, again, I'm assuming that's how it works. She gets there and we can actually see the night sky, which has stars in it, but it also has literal asterisms up there. As in, constellations, but the lines are actually drawn, so you can see them. And in some cases, the lines are just from one star to another. Kind of strange. So it could be that the sky, maybe the sky is warped in some magical way, or it could be that they're actually living inside of a giant dome, and what we're actually seeing is a false night sky. I don't know. I mean, again, this is Gaslight District, so it could just be completely that it's just part of the style of the show. But there's lots of rubble and such that's kind of just floating in space. And also there are candles that are just lighting automatically as she passes them. So either, again, this is magic, part of the style of the show, or maybe some sort of lost technology that used to be normalized back when humans were more of a thing, thousands upon thousands of years ago. But she gets up here, meets a gigantic angel bird, quote-unquote, old lady, that she was told was an old lady. And the old lady bird recognizes Mel. So apparently the two have known each other in the past, although Mel doesn't recognize her. So probably whenever she was a baby, which we see later on is confirmed to be the case. And as you might expect, knowing that Mel is the last human, we get sort of an angle that she is some sort of prophesied one of some sort. This is fine. I'm not the biggest fan of prophesied anything, but it's fitting for what they're going for. I had noticed around now that all the birds tend to have at least one giant eye, even if they revert back to, having visibly two of them in other shots. Which could just be a stylized thing, because in a lot of other cases, characters always have one eye that's bigger than the others, because this is, the style. But I did notice that whenever the giant bird is approaching her, it always turns so that one side of its head is facing her. Which, on one hand, you could say is like maybe a monomania thing, or showing that the character can only view things from one perspective. Or it could just be because it's a bird, and it's kind of how birds look at things. They'll twist their head so it's just looking at it from one perspective. But I noticed, and that's the important part. Now, at this point, we jump back to Ken, who is dismembering the Virtue, and probably the only scene that I actually found uncomfortable because it lingers so much on him tearing this robot's head off, and the fact that it's a robot is the only thing that really saves this. Because otherwise it lingers on it, and the thing is like screeching, and it's making like a really uncomfortable sound, and they're focusing so much on the fact that he's tugging. Really uncomfortable. But he tears its like head loose, which makes the casing around the brain come apart. So now the creature, the Virtue, is just this brain that's resting there that seems to have a cybernetic spinal cord attached to it. And the brain itself has like these little almost centipede legs, like 4 of them, that are just like ticking, tick, 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 like a little centipede demon. But it makes this horrible shrieking noise. I guess it can make noise, even though it's just a brain. And Ken eats it, and laughs and glows with this green iridescent power of some sort, and then the scene's over. Very strange. Very, very strange. Definitely one of those things I would expect to be elaborated on in the future. I guess he's eating these things ever so often to do something to himself, or maybe he's just into that shit. I don't know. But while this is happening, we see the room catches fire, and we see a photo of little baby Mel with one of these Virtue robots, and it slowly burns away. So we get hard confirmation that she used to be here, which can lead us to conclude that at some point Ken probably stole her. Because the Virtue that he was killing said to him, "I never told anyone." Again, the show does a good job of telling a story without actually telling it. Now, I know as a writer, it's actually really hard to do that, because you have all sorts of ideas that are swimming in your head and you get really excited about it, and whenever it comes to a scene, you just want to reveal everything as soon as possible. So actually having the restraint to just deliver information very simply, I think, is an example of having a higher skill level as a writer. And maybe more importantly than that, I appreciate it as a viewer. Also, at this point, I noted that it has happened enough times that it seems like angel birds do have black blood. And the Virtues also seem to have black blood. And the Big Mama bird says that she wants to use an army of angels to rain fire upon the rotten that are on the earth. And then she gets stabbed in the head, but seems to be fine afterwards, even though she sort of seems to radiate some sort of glowing white energy from her head. I don't know. Again, it could be the style of the show. It's really hard to tell sometimes. So the angels may also be immortal, although maybe they're supposed to be. Maybe that's the conflict. It's sort of a Prometheus' fire situation where the humans are not supposed to be immortal. But the angels are, and that's the conflict. Again, I don't know, and that's fine. But Mel apparently is part of some elaborate plan that is going to take place in the future, part of the Angels' plan, that requires her to be in their possession. So she isn't supposed to be hidden in the Gaslight district. She's supposed to be up there with them. But also at the same time, this whole human thing has happened before, supposedly. So if the Angels are always responsible for manufacturing a new human, then either they are really inept at their plan, or the human being sacrificed in some way is part of it. But of course they end up escaping, and Ken promises not to let Mel end up like them, I noticed. So maybe they all did used to be human, or at least he seems to know more about how the world works, like how the rules work, than she does. Okay, so the episode wraps up, and we get to the Central Court Plaza, where they're trying to do this big demonstration of destroying the human egg. And the court eye has a big eye pillar that we see at the very beginning that seems to be linked to the angels so that they can spy on everything. But the angels don't come down to interfere with it, so either they don't care or they can't. We don't know. Everyone in the crowd seems to recognize the inscription that Mel has drawn on the egg, so I guess whatever that inscription is relates to humans, and it is well known. Now, they do this lever pull and a big mechanical thing happens and a jagged, nasty-looking spike comes up out of the ground. And it's there to smash the egg specifically. I'm not sure what the spike is or why it would be there, but earlier on, the crowd is all chanting spike, spike, spike. And Ken says that they'll use human black blood on that spike time and time again. So presumably, whatever that thing is has been part of whatever this ongoing cycle has been for a very, very long time, especially if they're spaced apart by 10,000 years at a time. So maybe specifically black blood on the spike is what is giving them eternal life. Maybe they're being tricked into providing the angels with something. We don't know. Again, we don't know. And that is fine. Now, everyone wiggles their little fingers together as some sort of weird prayer to the Black Hand, which has never been referenced before. It's the first time we've heard about it, as far as I know. Whatever the Black Hand is, I don't know. But the human is the only thing that is threatening their eternal life, as Ken says. Even if Ken seems to dislike what they are. Now, I appreciate this scene for Ken talking to the egg, but basically talking to Mel, and it being framed that way. So his performance is haunting Mel as he's basically telling her to her face that she will never know peace. And you can almost see that she's recognizing him as being a monster. So, good scene. And as expected, I think I would be hard-pressed to find anyone that would actually be surprised by this. But of course, the egg hatches, and it's an angel bird, of course. And it's a very cute design, because that little angel bird is a little puffball, just a little puffball with two big old eyes. And no one seems to care about it. So it may just be a common angel, or maybe everyone sees them so often as little cameras that just no one cares. I don't know. But we are left seeing that everyone in the crowd realizes that they have lied. And Mel asks, what do we do? And there's just no resolution for it. So good opening for what is the core premise of the whole series. And we also get a hint that Jack, the guy that was cemented and thrown into the ocean at the very beginning, and other secrets are consistently being pulled from the ocean, which you would think that would be a really big industry. If everyone knew that secrets are thrown into the ocean, there would be people that are constantly going down there to find the people that have been entombed to try to get their information, because it's probably a very profitable thing to do. So it makes perfect sense. Really appreciate that. And in the closing credits, we get sort of an odd panning image at the very end that details, kind of everything, like angels, the rotlings, the rotling priests, and so on. And they're trying to subdue something that sort of looks like a giant white whale, while there is a giant wormfly centipede thing that is smoking cigarettes that has a hatched egg, maybe, containing golden idols or something that's looming over everything. And I'm sure once we actually get a proper series, I'm going to assume this is leading to a series, I'm sure that people will just say, oh yeah, that's Sam, or whatever. But for the time being, it's just weird. But anyways, we get that, sort of hinting at things to come, perhaps. And we get a final image of a televised alert system that is telling us about a prophetic threat that is ongoing. So once I saw that, it got put all together that the reason why everyone is so obsessed with this human prophecy thing is because the angels are the ones that are controlling the media. They're the ones that control everything, presumably. So the reason why everyone is obsessed with it is because the angels want them to be obsessed with it, because they're the ones that are using this as propaganda in their everyday life. So you can see all the pieces fitting together, even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense right now. The angels, presumably, are responsible for either creating the new human every 10,000 years, or they at least were in control of Mel, and they're also responsible for propagating the idea that the rotlings and zombies down below need to kill the human as soon as they possibly can, or it threatens their immortality. This all coming from the angels. But also the angels don't like the immortal rotlings below and want to destroy them or rain fire upon them. And Mel is somehow key to that in some weird way. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like the Angels are really doing that much to prevent Mel from being found out or lost or acquired and killed and so on. So all the pieces are there, but how they fit together, we don't know. Which, again, repeat with me, is fine. So, what are my overall thoughts on this? I like how the series communicates this idea subtly without being up its own ass. I like that. I don't know how long that will last, though. The thing about stories like this is that once we know too much about the setting, the series will have nothing to write on besides its character drama. And character drama in this pilot is riding solely on Ken and Mel. When your setting has characters that are all amoral, like this setting, where everything is just bad all the time, everyone's mistreating each other, people are dying left and right, it's hard to care about anything. Stories, when it comes down to it, are usually, well, almost always, unless they're like hard sci-fi or something, about humanity. And if everyone and everything is inhuman, there's no attachment to them beyond external interest, like hard sci-fi. I think then that this will probably make a good mini-series, which hopefully that's what they're aiming for. I don't know. I don't think it would make a good long-lasting setting that could be applied to other stories, though. This is not D&D, it's not Middle-earth, it's nothing like that. But it is a good thing to watch as a pilot. I think it'll be a good miniseries if that's what they're aiming for. Check it out. Check out the work of this 50 to 100 people. Yeah, as for me, back to work for me, making endless Dragon Ball content, because I am one man. When you see a video on my channel, it's just me. I don't have 50 people. Otherwise, I'm probably getting a lot more done. I hope you enjoyed my review here. I didn't want it to just be me regurgitating the things that happened, though. I know that's a criticism of like video essays these days because a lot of people are just regurgitating this is what happened in the plot. And they'll do that for 2 hours to gain views, but you ended up not watching anything. But in this case, the reason why I formatted it like this is specifically because that is how I enjoyed it. Like actually breaking it down and actually trying to analyze it. So hopefully you get the idea. Anyways, back to Dragon Ball content for me, back to the Dragon Ball mines. I'll see you guys next time. I have a Patreon, by the way. I never mentioned that. I have a Patreon. It keeps me alive. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.